beneath the vast crystalline dome of the United Earth Embassy, golden light slid across polished marble like liquid memory. Translucent banners swayed gently overhead, each bearing the symbol of unity between worlds, symbols more aspirational than real. Voices murmured all around, dozens of languages weaving together in a low, living hum. Some soft and melodic, others cold and mechanical. The air carried the scent of diplomacy, sharp cologne, filtered oxygen, and something synthetic pretending to be peace. This was the theater of interstellar politics, and standing near the edge of it all, poised and composed, was Voss. He didn't just belong here. He moved like the room belonged to him. Sharp suit. Relaxed stance. Eyes that scanned without lingering. A man used to tension, practiced in navigating crisis with a smile just sharp enough to be taken seriously. And then, he saw her. Everything stopped moving. She didn't enter. She appeared. Like gravity had shifted and the crowd parted out of instinct, not courtesy. Tall. Still. Otherworldly. Veana of the Zari. Her very presence whispered of stardust and exile. Silver-white hair flowed around her shoulders like strands of zero-gravity silk. Her skin pale blue, softly glowing, held shifting, celestial patterns just beneath the surface. With every step, those patterns shimmered. Not for show. As if they responded to something only she could hear. The golden filaments woven into her ceremonial robe caught the ambient light and scattered it, turning her every movement into something both sacred and dangerous. And when their eyes met, it wasn't intrigue. It was recognition. Her gaze didn't flinch. Didn't soften. There was no performance in it. Just stillness. Deep, ancestral stillness. As if she saw something buried in him before he even spoke. She walked toward him, not cautiously, not boldly, but like someone claiming what had always been hers. Her voice, when it came, was low and smooth. Not soft. Precise. Each word weighed before release. Voss, she said. I've read about you. He smiled, the way diplomats do, measured, warm, slightly defensive. I hope only the good parts. She didn't return the smile. Not entirely. Just a faint curve of her lips. It felt less like flirtation, and more like evaluation. That depends, she said. On one's definition of good. And just like that, the room around them slipped into the background. The conversations, the glasses clinking, the endless droning of policy, it all fell away. Not because they moved. But because something had shifted. It wasn't attraction. Not yet. It was older. Stranger. Something carved deep into memory neither of them lived, but somehow, still carried. In that quiet space between them, without touch or sound, something ancient stirred. Not a meeting. A collision. And whether it was fate or chance or the slow pull of gravity across bloodlines and galaxies, it no longer mattered. Because in that single, impossible moment, a new story began. One that would challenge everything they had been taught to protect. Species. Duty. Legacy. All of it would be rewritten. They met in the quiet corners where diplomacy ended and truth began. Hidden rooms behind archive doors. Corridors where voices dropped to whispers, and footsteps disappeared beneath the soft hum of power cores. That's where it started, not with confessions, but with curiosity. Conversations that lingered long after they ended. Words traded not to persuade, but to understand. Late nights turned into rituals. Heated debates gave way to shared silence, the kind that speaks louder than sound. When their fingers touched for the first time, just a casual handoff of a data pad, it wasn't electric. It was something quieter. Deeper. Like gravity shifting ever so slightly. They didn't flinch. They let it linger. Their first kiss didn't happen during a moment of passion, but in stillness beneath the stars of a fabricated sky. Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from recognition. Like they had done this before in another life, on another world. They stopped hiding after that, not from the world, but from themselves. Every glance became a question answered. Every word, a bridge. They taught each other not just language, but rhythm. She shared the songs of her people, sung in frequencies Earth instruments couldn't replicate. He showed her how to dance barefoot on metal floors, laughing like gravity didn't matter. When they wed, there were no witnesses. Just the two of them beneath the glowing trees of the Zari enclave. The leaves shimmered like they knew. No ceremony. No speeches. Just hands clasped, hearts steady, and a promise spoken in two voices, woven into one. And when their son, Saturn, was born, everything changed. His skin glowed, not brightly, just enough to make the shadows lean in. His eyes opened wide, holding galaxies no telescope could name. In that moment, they understood he wasn't a miracle or a mistake. He was the answer. Not to politics. Not to science. But to a question the universe had long forgotten how to ask. It was late. The kind of quiet that only comes when a home has settled, when the lights are dim, and even the air seems to breathe slower. Their son, Saturn, was asleep between them, his tiny chest rising in a rhythm so calm it felt sacred. The glow from his skin cast soft shadows along the walls, painting their bedroom in shifting patterns of blue and silver. Aller lay on his back, one arm draped protectively around Veana, the other resting beside their son. His mind was still. Not empty, never empty, but full of something new. Something fragile. A kind of peace he hadn't known he needed. That's when she said it. One child is not enough. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't cut the silence, it became part of it. A ripple, not a wave. But it hit him just the same. Aller turned his head, unsure if he'd heard her right. Not enough. Veana didn't move. Her gaze stayed on their son, her eyes distant but certain. The Zari do not raise single offspring. It's unnatural. One alone cannot carry a lineage. He needs siblings' support, reflection, challenge. A full nest. 10. That is what I want. He blinked. Once. Twice. Then laughed softly, hoping she might be teasing. But there was no mischief in her tone. No smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Just clarity. 10, he repeated, as if saying it might reshape it into something more reasonable. She finally looked at him. And in that look, he saw no threat. No command. Only truth. Yes. 10. There is no room for negotiation. Aller sat up slightly, running a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of the math, the biology, the absurdity of it all. They hadn't even known if one child was possible. Saturn had been a miracle wrapped in speculation. 1,000 scientists had said it wouldn't work, and yet, here he was. Breathing. Glowing. Laughing. Living. Still, 10. He turned back toward her, heart pounding beneath the quiet. Veana, I love you. You know that. But 10 children? That's not how humans, we don't do that anymore. Even 2 is a lot. She didn't argue. Instead, she reached for his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. Her skin was warm beneath his palm, smooth like polished stone. And beneath it, a faint pulse. Not hers. Not his. Something new. Aller's breath caught. He didn't speak. He couldn't. The glow under his hand pulsed once more, like a heartbeat still learning the rhythm of life. It's already begun, she whispered. His mind reeled. He hadn't planned for this. Not yet. But the universe had always had its own timing. And maybe, so did love. He looked at her, really looked. At the woman who had crossed stars to stand beside him. At the mother of a child no one believed could exist. At the one who, without raising her voice, had just rewritten the next decade of his life. And slowly, he nodded. Not in defeat. Not in surrender. But in awe. Because somehow, impossibly, terrifyingly, he believed her. And more than that, he didn't want to stop her. News travels fast. Faster than starlight. Faster than thought. And when the word broke about the second hybrid child, already forming in Veana's womb, it didn't spark applause. It sparked fire. Across Earth's networks, headlines screamed. Alien ambassador expecting again, what is humanity becoming? Unnatural union produces second child, Global Ethics Council demands oversight. How many will they have? 10. 10. All are set at the edge of a long metal bench in the United Earth Council's waiting chamber, watching as the feed lit up across the glass walls. Talking heads argued over gene stability, cultural contamination, interstellar ethics. Politicians raised concerns in somber tones while studio lighting gleamed off their worried brows. On the Zari networks, the tone was different but no less divided. Some saw Veana as a traitor, her womb a doorway to uncertainty. Others called her the mother of the new dawn. Some whispered she was breaking bloodlines that had survived galactic collapse. The air thickened. Not with smog, but suspicion. Inside the council chamber, Aller stood before a semicircle of representatives. Humans, Zari, and a few who belonged to neither. Their eyes dissected him. He could feel it, each breath weighed, each word about to be twisted. A counselor leaned forward. Her voice was careful, too careful. Counselor Ilangirani. Mr. Voss. If your wife intends to carry 10 children, all of hybrid nature, are you not concerned that this might create a population unbound by either culture? Neither fully human nor Zari. Aller met her gaze without flinching. Aller. No. I'm not concerned. Murmurs. Pants scratched. Veana, seated silently at his side, remained still as stone, regal and radiant beneath the sterile lights. Another voice chimed in. Deeper. Male. From the Zari delegation. Zari official. And what do you call such a species? What banner will they fly? Who will claim them? Aller. Quietly. They will claim themselves. That silence, the sharp one that falls just before judgment, rippled across the room. Aller. They won't belong to Earth. Or to Zari Prime. They'll belong to a future none of us can imagine. One that doesn't ask permission to exist. A pause. Heavy. Breathing slowed. Somewhere, someone typed that line into a headline. Later that evening, back home, Veana poured him tea made from Zari herbs, fragrant, blue, slightly bitter. He didn't ask what it was for. She handed it to him with a quiet gesture that said, "You need this more than I do." They sat in silence as the windows darkened with night. Beyond the glass, Earth's sky held no stars, just a shimmer of satellites, blinking like distant insects. Aller. Softly. Do you regret it? Veana didn't ask what he meant. She shook her head once, slow and deliberate. Then, finally quietly, but without hesitation, she said. Veana. I didn't fall in love to follow rules. I fell in love to break them. And in that moment, even with the world roaring outside, the only sound that mattered was the tiny flutter of life glowing beneath her skin. The night the second child was born, the sky over the Zari enclave pulsed with soft bioluminescence, as if the trees themselves had sensed it, another ripple in the great pattern, another light added to the web. Inside the medical dome, the air was silent but thick with tension. Zari physicians moved like water, fluid and focused, their long fingers guiding instruments that shimmered like glass but hummed like song. Human techs stood nearby, watching nervously, their faces tight with a mix of awe and uncertainty. Veana lay still, her hair spread like stardust against the woven silver fabric of the birthing bed. Sweat glistened on her forehead, catching the ambient light, but her eyes, those ancient, burning eyes, remained locked on Aller's. He stood by her side, holding her hand tighter than he meant to, the pressure revealing what he wouldn't say aloud. He was afraid. Not of her. Not of the child. But of the moment. Then came the cry. It wasn't loud. It was high and clear, like a bell rung in a deep place. Time seemed to pause. One of the physicians lifted the child gently, swaddled her in a cloth spun from silk glass, and turned to the parents with slow reverence. Aller's breath caught as he stepped forward. The child, his daughter, was small, perfect. Her skin, pale like his, but with faint lines of Zari glow pulsing just beneath the surface. Her hair, dark and fine. But her eyes opened. And the stars looked back at him. They weren't exactly like Saren's. No. These were quieter, deeper, like looking into a nebula that hadn't yet been named. He reached out, unsure if he deserved to touch something that pure, that impossible. Veana reached first. She pulled the child to her chest, her arms trembling slightly now, not from pain, but from something harder to name. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a breath. Veana. She is whole. Aller nodded slowly. Aller. She's everything. From the corner of the room came a small sound, tiny feet slapping against the smooth floor. Saren, now a toddler, had slipped past the attendants. He padded forward on unsteady legs, eyes wide as he looked up at the bundle in his mother's arms. He reached out, as only a child can, without fear, without question. His fingers brushed his sister's hand. A pulse of light flickered between them. Not bright, but unmistakable. Like two circuits completing. The physicians froze. The room went still. Veana inhaled sharply. Aller didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, surrounded by sterile instruments and glowing trees beyond glass walls, they all saw it. This wasn't just another child. This was connection. Proof that whatever lived between these children wasn't human. Wasn't Zari. Was something new. Something inevitable. And from that moment forward, Aller understood something he hadn't before, not in the chambers of council, not even in Veana's quiet conviction. They weren't just starting a family. They were founding a legacy. The days that followed were not quiet. They were not gentle. Outside their home, the world began to tremble softly at first, like a distant vibration beneath polished floors. Then louder. Then louder still. It wasn't the chaos of war. Not yet. It was the hum of doubt. In human cities, news feeds ran constant. Talk shows speculated. Politicians invoked ancient fears under the pretense of science. Some asked if these hybrid children were a miracle. Others whispered the word contagion. In Zari chambers, tradition recoiled. Veana's name was spoken with either reverence or disdain. There was no middle ground anymore. To some, she was the breaker of bloodlines. To others, the seed-bearer. But inside the enclave, their home remained still. Safe, for now. Aller stood on the balcony one evening, watching the sky shift from burnt orange to cold indigo. Veana sat behind him, humming softly as she fed their daughter, her voice woven from tones no human ear was meant to understand. Saren played with a stack of glowing cubes nearby, rearranging them in geometric patterns that didn't follow any logic Aller recognized but somehow felt right. The wind touched his skin like breath from another world. It brought with it the scent of iron and ash, faint, but real. Somewhere, something was burning. He didn't speak until the hum quieted. Aller. They are afraid of what they can't define. Veana looked up, her gaze steady. Veana. They always were? Aller. They say we're making something dangerous. A pause. A longer silence. Then Veana responded, voice low. Veana. We are. Aller turned. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't joking. She rose to her feet, gently laying their daughter in the sleeping basin lined with soft threads of Zari weave. Her steps were soundless, but the air shifted around her as she moved to his side. Veana. What we are making is dangerous to fear. To walls. To the idea that blood decides destiny. She placed a hand on his chest, feeling his breath beneath. Veana. Our children are the future. and the future has never been safe. He looked at her, at the strange woman who had once been a stranger. Who had crossed a galaxy not just to seek peace but to build something no treaty could protect. Aller exhaled slowly. Aller. They want us to choose. Between the world, and our children. Veana. Then let them ask. She turned her face upward toward the sky, now scattered with a faint twinkle of orbital platforms. Her voice, when it returned, was quieter. More intimate. Veana. Because I have already chosen. And in the space between his heartbeat and her silence, he realized. So had he. The invitation came wrapped in protocol. Not a threat. Not on paper. Just an official dispatch from the Earth Integration Council. Sealed with diplomatic formality, lined with sterile language designed to soothe. A proposal, it read. For safety. For study. For harmony. They were offering a sanctuary, a secluded research facility orbiting one of Jupiter's lesser moons. Fully equipped. Secure. Isolated. Your children will be safe there. Your family will be protected. You will be watched. Carefully. Aller sat alone in the dim light of their shared study, the letter still glowing faintly on the hollow screen before him. The words didn't scream. They whispered. They didn't accuse. They invited. But he knew what they meant. Containment disguised as concern. Control wrapped in kindness. Veana entered the room quietly, sensing the shift in the air the way wild animals sense weather. She said nothing at first, just stood behind him, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. Veana. They've made their decision. Aller didn't respond. Not with words. He closed the hollow screen. Aller. They want us hidden. Removed from the equation. Veana. Not us. The idea of us. A silence stretched between them, neither angry nor resigned. Just heavy. Filled with memory, with consequence. He stood and faced her. Aller. If we don't go, they may come here? She tilted her head, considering. Veana. And if we do, they will believe that fear wins. Aller looked past her, through the wide pane of glass that framed their view of the stars. Somewhere out there, entire systems live without ever knowing Earth or Zari. Unaware that, in this one small corner of the galaxy, two people had tried to rewrite what family meant. Aller. What if I'm not strong enough? She stepped closer. Her voice dropped quiet, but with steel beneath it. Veana. You are. Not because you fight. But because you stay. He looked into her eyes, the same ones that had terrified him once, not because of their alien glow, but because of what they saw in him. Veana. We don't run, Aller. We root. That's what they've never understood. Outside, Saturn laughed. Their daughter giggled in response. The sound filtered in like sunlight through a broken window, warm, accidental, perfect. And that's when he knew. He wasn't building a case anymore. He was building a home. A wall might keep them out. But it would also keep the world from learning what love, unbound by fear, could truly look like. He looked back at Veana. And with a slow, quiet breath he chose. Aller. Then we stay. The night was unusually still. No wind brushed the leaves of the glowing trees. No distant hum from the dome's systems. Even the stars, beyond the glass canopy, seemed to hold their breath. Aller lay awake, not from noise, but the absence of it. Beside him, Veana slept lightly, her arm curled around their daughter. Saturn was in the next room, dreaming in the way only children of two worlds can, restless, but unafraid. Then, just past midnight, something shifted. A sound. Soft. Measured. Intentional. Not a creak of the enclave. Not a night bird brushing a branch. A footstep. Barely audible. But real. Aller was on his feet before thinking, moving like instinct was louder than logic. His hand reached for the small defense wand tucked beneath the bedside shelf. Not a weapon, not really, but enough to warn. He stepped into the hallway. Shadows curved where light should fall. The bioluminescent strips along the walls flickered once, then again. Down the corridor, the door to the interface room stood ajar. It was supposed to be sealed. He moved toward it silently, feet gliding over the cool floor, breath controlled. Heart pounding but not with fear. With certainty. The door slid open at his touch. Inside, a figure stood hunched over their main console, fingers moving too quickly, too precisely. Not a thief. A collector. Aller didn't hesitate. Aller. Step away. The figure froze. Turned. It was human. Young. Clean-shaven. Wearing a technician's badge, one of the envoys assigned to monitor energy flow between the enclave and the main grid. Or so they had claimed. The man raised his hand slowly, but his eyes betrayed no fear. Trespasser. I was told they'd come for you soon. I just wanted a head start. Aller narrowed his gaze. Aller. A head start on what? The man's lips twitched, as if resisting the urge to explain too much. Trespasser. You don't get it. You and her, you're not symbols. You're a signal. And there are people, important people, who want to make sure that signal doesn't spread. He glanced toward the data crystal he'd been trying to extract, glowing softly, pulsing in the familiar rhythm of Zari human tech. Half alive. Like their children. Veana appeared in the doorway then, silent as fog. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The man saw her, and for the first time, he hesitated. Not because she looked threatening. But because she looked calm. Too calm. And that scared him more. Veana. Coldly. You came into our home without invitation. The man backed away, hands still raised. Trespasser. You should have left when they offered. Now they won't ask again. Aller stepped between him and the door. Aller. Then let them come. And with one movement, Veana lifted her palm. Light shimmered around her wrist, and the crystal he had been trying to steal lifted from the console, floating back into her grasp. It dimmed the moment it touched her skin. Alive. Connected. Denied. The man swallowed hard. Then he ran. No one chased him. Because it wasn't about him. He was just the echo before the thunder. And somewhere deep inside, they both knew. The storm had just begun. The dawn came slowly. A soft gradient of muted gold bled across the enclave sky, filtered through the glass canopy that separated them from the cold breath of Earth's upper atmosphere. The trees shimmered, their bioluminescent leaves dimming as the natural light returned. Inside, silence held the air like a fragile thing. Aller stood in the nursery, watching Saturn sleep. The boy's fingers twitched occasionally, his breath even, glowing veins pulsing faintly along his temples like the roots of something ancient and sacred. Nearby, their daughter dozed in her cocoon cradle, the small curve of her form rising and falling with a quiet rhythm that soothed the ache in his chest. Behind him, Veana entered. Barefoot. Wrapped in a loose robe of soft Zari weave, the fabric catching the morning light like mist. She didn't speak right away. She just stood beside him, watching what they had created. Then, in a voice as calm as drifting dust, she said, Veana. My world didn't die all at once. Aller turned slightly, not surprised. Just waiting. Veana. It didn't explode. It didn't burn. It faded. Like a song too long repeated. A rhythm we stopped hearing, until it was already gone. She walked slowly to the window, resting her palm on the cool glass. The glow in her skin pulsed once beneath it. Veana. We built cities that reached the stars. We mastered energy, time, thought. But we forgot balance. We consumed, and called it progress. We isolated, and called it order. We sterilized emotion. Discarded instinct. We believed our minds would save us. She closed her eyes. Veana. And when the wind stopped moving, we had no songs left to sing. Aller stepped closer, quietly, heart heavy. Aller. Why didn't you tell me this before? Veana opened her eyes, not tearful but vast. Quiet storms live behind them. Veana. Because grief is a language no one wants to translate. A long silence passed. Only the quiet hum of sleeping children filled the air. She turned to him fully now, reaching for his hand. Her fingers were cool, firm, deliberate. Veana. We fled across the stars not just for survival, Aller. We fled because we forgot how to love. Not just partners, but families. Children. Futures. What we once called sacred, we let die in the name of logic. Her voice dropped. Veana. I won't let it happen again. He held her hand tighter, grounding her. Or maybe grounding himself. Aller. That's why 10 means everything to you? She nodded. Veana. Not just for me. For us. For what comes next. A beat. Then she looked toward their children still sleeping, still innocent, still untouched by the noise of the world outside. Veana. They are not just ours, Aller. They are the answer. And the question. At the same time. He didn't respond. He simply leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers Zari style. And in that moment, without speaking, they rewrote a vow. That even if the stars turned against them, they would not forget. Not this time. It began with a shadow. Not a scream. Not an alarm. Just a shift in the light above the enclave dome, a subtle dimming, like a hand placed over a candle flame. Aller looked up through the glass and saw them. 4 black diplomatic crafts. No insignias. No broadcast codes. Silent. Still. Waiting. Within the hour, a message arrived. Short. Unmistakable. Surrender the children. For their protection. Refuse, and a decision will be made for you. No signature. Because those who give ultimatums in the name of peace never sign their names. Inside their home, Veana stood at the center of the nursery, holding their daughter close to her chest. Her eyes were calm, but her body tense, steady like a storm just before the sky breaks. Saturn clutched his father's leg, confused by the hush in the room, by the strange glint in his parents' eyes. Aller knelt and ran his hand through his son's soft, silver-streaked hair. Aller. Do you trust me? The boy nodded slow, unsure but brave in the way only children can be. Then Aller stood, turned to Veana. Aller. If we run, they'll chase. If we surrender, they'll dissect. She nodded. Veana. And if we fight? He looked at her for a long time. Aller. Then the galaxy watches what happens when love refuses to kneel. Outside, the lights along the trees began to pulse. The enclave had awakened. Zari flora, connected by root, by pulse, by ancient design, felt the tension in the air. Leaves glowed brighter, pulsing with soft blue-green fire. The walls of their home shimmered with defensive layers Veana had never explained, only whispered about. It was no longer just a sanctuary. It was alive. And it would protect its own. The diplomatic crafts landed without ceremony. From them emerged armored envoys, faces covered, hands empty, but their presence radiated pressure. Authority wrapped in silence. They stepped forward as one. Until they stopped. Because waiting at the edge of the clearing, was not just Aller. Not just Veana. But others. Zari elders who had once denounced her. Human scientists who had doubted them. Even a childless diplomat from the council, silent, but standing with eyes lowered in respect. None spoke. Because it wasn't time for words. It was time for witnessing. One of the envoys raised a hand, a silent demand. Envoy. You risk everything for defiance. Veana stepped forward, her child still in her arms. Her voice was quiet, but unbreakable. Veana. No. We risk everything for the right to exist. And that is not a negotiation. The envoy did not respond. Instead, the light shifted again. Above them, far beyond Earth's atmosphere, a satellite feed caught it first. The moment went viral before it finished happening. A mother. An alien. A human. A father. Two children glowing with unknown potential. Standing. Unmoving. Refusing. And the world saw. Not a threat. Not an enemy. But a family. And in the hours that followed, governments paused. Orders were held. Retreats were issued behind closed doors. Because no one wanted to be the first to strike a child. Not when the universe was watching. That night, Aller and Veana stood again beneath the trees. The air smelled like rain, though none had fallen. Their children slept soundly, unaware that history had bent around them. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Aller. Do you think we've won? She leaned into him. Veana. No. A pause. Then, quietly. Veana. But we've planted something. He nodded. Aller. And it's growing. She smiled, eyes closed, resting her head against his shoulder. Veana. One day, 10 won't seem like so many. He laughed softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. Aller. No room for negotiation. She whispered, without hesitation. Veana. None. And in that stillness, beneath the stars that had once judged them, the universe remained quiet. Because for once, it had no answer. Only awe. He gave her one child. And for a moment, he thought that would be enough. But that night, as starlight filtered through the quiet of their enclave, she turned to him calm, certain. And said, one is not enough. She didn't plead. She didn't explain. She simply spoke the truth of her kind. Because she wasn't just a woman. She was Zari. Raised among ruins. Born from a people who survived collapse by building what could never be torn apart. Family. Not 1. Not 2. 10. Not a wish. Not a question. Just a vow. There is no room for negotiation, she whispered. And in that quiet breath, he heard the sound of worlds shifting. This wasn't about politics. Or biology. It was about legacy. About planting roots where stars had once failed. And as he looked into her eyes, those eyes that held the memory of galaxies long dead, he understood. He hadn't just fallen in love with someone from another world. He had fallen into something far greater. A future no one was ready for. And a family no one could ever erase. They fell in love when they weren't supposed to. They built a family no one believed could exist. And when the world tried to divide them, they chose to stay. To protect. To hope. What started with one child became a promise. A stand. A quiet rebellion wrapped in lullabies and glowing eyes. Not everyone understood. Not everyone accepted. But in the face of fear, they didn't hide. They lit a fire. Because sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe is a family that refuses to break. And this is just the beginning. If their story moved you, if you're still thinking about what it means to choose love over fear, then don't stop here. There are more stories waiting beyond the stars. More impossible families. More quiet revolutions. Subscribe to Alien Chronicles. And come back soon. Because the galaxy has only just begun to speak.